If there's one thing I've always associated PlayStation with, it's JRPGs. I ate them up for breakfast as a kid, and even though I'm not a huge PlayStation gamer these days, I thought, you know what? I'd take a look at the state of the PS5. It's been out 3 years so far, which is kinda weird, it feels like it was yesterday, but I digress. How's the JRPG scene doing over there? Now obviously with backwards compatibility of the PS4, it's hardly starved for JRPGs. In fact, some developers are choosing to make JRPGs for PS4 over PS5 due to that. But how about those with a PS5 build, like a proper PS5 version? Well, here's a jolly good bunch of them. This video is taking into account only games available physically because that's what I'm all about if you know me, and if you want to purchase any of them and support me, kindly do so with the links in the description. That helps out a lot. Let's jump in. Atelier Ryza 3 is a game I haven't played, but having played both Ryza 1 and 2 and adored both of them, I'm assuming this is at least pretty decent. It's impossible to even think of them failing to make this one good. Now in a bit of an open world, our royal finest is going on her final adventure, battling monsters, gathering ingredients, crafting items, and making a bunch of friends along the way. Universally, very wholesome, charming, and approachable. I love the series, especially the Ryza ones. Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai is an action RPG that's a spin-off of the Well of Dragon Quest series and is based on a manga and anime, hence the weird name. Now, I'm not familiar with the anime or manga, but this is still a really cool time and it's something a bit different. Dragon Quest spin-offs used to be, 10 a penny, but have slowed down recently, so it's great to have this again. It does not have a physical release in the West, but there is an Asian version with English on the disc, which is pretty awesome and highly recommended. Cross Tales is a really fine tactical JRPG if you're looking for something to scratch that Final Fantasy Tactics itch. Let's face it, we all have it. And despite being published by Kemco, this is a fantastic attempt at following in the footsteps with mechanics that play very similarly. You can see they studied what made Tactics so great and emulated it very well, but still having its own feel. It doesn't feel like you're playing a clone, even though you can practically see the development team in their lab coats pissing about with a petri dish. This is available physically in Japan and Asia with English. There are 2 Disgaea games native to the PS5. Disgaea 6 has been out a while and may be a better way to play compared to the Switch version, for example, which I know from experience had performance issues at launch. You would hope something as meaty as PS5 would be able to power through the NIS American jank. Disgaea 7 is the latest one and I am told it is a return to form in the series. Either way, these are fantastic tactical RPGs filled with lots of personality and loads of over-the-top content. Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord is also another tactical RPG. I swear I didn't make this list with these on the brain, it's just sort of happened. And this is a very commendable one with solid mechanics that plays the way I prefer them to. It's actually a different style of game compared to the first Fairy Fencer F game, which was a more standard RPG, but this here seems much better, although the story is a bit of a guffage. Fallen Legion Rise to Glory plus Revenants is a double pack of side-scrolling JRPGs, very stylized in their approach, and I know many people like them. I've actually played one of these games on the Vita. I wasn't a huge fan of their approach to the gameplay, but that's just my preference. I'm always a bit biased against side-on-view RPGs. They lack immersion for me, but as I said, that's just me. If you pick up this PS5 release, you're gonna get a lot of bang for your buckage. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade is kind of a divisive one. You're always going to get that with a remake of something people love so dearly or love to hate so dearly. Those haters, man, they always got to tell you how awful something is for some reason, but as Final Fantasy VII is my favorite game of all time, I tell you what, playing this on my PS4, it was almost a religious experience for me. It's one of the best gaming experiences I've had in a long time. Loved absolutely every second of it, even the mild padding, but for me, that just added to a world I already loved and adored, and the production value was off the roof, Midgard JPEGs included, and the music is the best soundtrack of all time. And this PS5 release comes with the Intergrade DLC. And how can we forget, of course, Rebirth, coming very soon next year. Well, very soon in my brain. It's actually quite a long time away, but I can't think of anything else except I need it. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is actually a prelude to Final Fantasy VII. Originally a PSP game, it's a good one. I like the gameplay a lot. Not a fan of the story, to be honest. It's just a bit too Nomura, if you know what I mean. Square Enix forgot to put the leash on for this one. Certainly it's a Dragon Ball anime, but you know, if I take it as non-canon by sticking my fingers in my ears and pretending I'm not listening, it's a damn fine action game, and they put a lot of effort into remastering it for modern consoles, especially the PS5. Final Fantasy XVI is one of the latest ones. I sadly haven't had the chance to play this as of yet, but I'd be daft if I didn't include it in this list. Again, quite a divisive game, those who really love it and those who hate it, and those who don't like it but are respectable enough to be happy for those who do. Although to be honest, if you're naming your JRPG character Clive, you're always asking for trouble, Square. What you doing, man? Are you enjoying this vid so far? Well, if you are, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. I think it's the best thing you'll do today, honestly. And if you really want to support me, check out my Patreon. You get a lot of great things over there. Ad-free videos, bonus exclusive videos, like proper bonus exclusive videos, early access to stuff, a secret Discord, many things for a low price. So go take a look. I think it's worth it. Labyrinth of Galleria, the Moon Society, is the sequel to Labyrinth of Refrain, Coven of Dusk. Continuing on the series' gameplay style, this is a first-person dungeon crawler with puzzle elements as you explore the depths. A unique thing about this game is the sheer amount of fighters you take into account with you. You've got to cover all sides, ladies and gents. Expect a little bit of fan service thrown into this if you want something a little bit risque, but not too much. It also lasts you a good while with a lot of content. Mato Anomalies wasn't well received when it released. I think that's mainly down to expectations. I think people assumed it would be something that it eventually turned out not to be. Mato Anomalies is a mix of detective work and turn-based battles. People, including myself, thought it would be like a Persona game, but that is not the case and should be judged by its own merits. Neptunia Sister vs. Sisters and Neptunia Reverse, this is a series I'm not familiar with. Compile are not a company I generally target when it comes to my JRPG collection. While they make competent games mechanically, I'm not much of a fan of their stories, which is my main draw to the genre. So yeah, I'm not the person to ask about Sisters vs. Sisters or Reverse. I don't know, but they are on the system, that much I do know. Octopath Traveler 2, unlike the original, is not a Switch console exclusive. I think many people forget that it also got a native release on the PS5. If you're worried about missing out on the first game, you don't need to worry. This is considered to be completely by itself and is almost perfecting the formula made by the first game, which many people enjoyed, but its flaws came to the front after the initial hype died down. This fixed almost every issue people had with that game. It's beautiful, well made, mechanically great, and is probably an essential release on the system. Persona 5 Royal, pretty obvious one. The Persona brand is now synonymous with top-tier JRPGs, especially following on from 3 and 4, and many people say this one is even better than those. Expect a ridiculous amount of content and polish as you lose your life to this game. Metaphorically, of course. Persona 3 Reload is an upcoming JRPG, a remake of an all-time classic, the game that propelled the Persona franchise into the juggernaut that it is today. Originally a PS2 release, then PSP, this remake is based off the original version and won't include like the bonus content, which is an odd choice, but you know, I vastly prefer the PS2 version anyways. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but it's true, okay? Either way, it looks like it's going to be a fantastic game and I can't wait for it. Redemption Reapers is a tactical RPG that has essence of a bit of Fire Emblem about it, and you have to applaud the production value for an indie game. It's certainly more dark and mature than most of the genre, but perhaps it bites off a bit more than it can chew. It certainly did not light up the critics' eyes compared to Nintendo's revered series, but a commendable effort nonetheless. Rhapsody Marl Kingdom Chronicles is a wonderful double pack of older JRPGs, one from the PS1 and the sequel on PS2. This is the first time they've been available in English, however, and boy am I glad. These two games are overwhelmingly charming in their presentation and story. Not only do they look amazing, but they sound amazing too, because it's almost a Japanese take on a Disney cartoon musical from the 90s, you know, when they used to be good. Story segments are often told through sing and dance with plenty of comedic and heartwarming moments. The gameplay is simple but effective, and I love these games. Yeah, people say that they're girly RPGs, but so what? I can crack open a can of Newcastle Brown while playing it just to even it out, you know what I mean? SD Gundam Battle Alliance is an action RPG. Some may call it like a pure action game, that's fine, it's a hack and slash sort of thing, but it does have RPG elements as you upgrade your mech suit. This is a really nicely produced game set in the Gundam universe as you battle through famous storylines, but this time something's wrong. The timeline has altered and you need to go fix it, then play out the real events after that. So this will be a real treat for Gundam fans. I don't really know anything about the series, but even I had a bloody good time with it. In terms of physical release, it doesn't have one in the West, but if you check the links below, you can grab an import copy which does have English. I've guided you to the correct one. Not all of them have English, so yeah, just follow the one that I've linked, okay? Sea of Stars? Alright, it's not a JRPG because it wasn't made in Japan, but it's such a well-made homage to the classics, yet it has its own identity that it means it should be in your collection if you love games like Chrono Trigger. It's an honorary JRPG, shall we say that? Okay, beautifully made, nice story, fun gameplay, it deserves all the praise that it gets. Currently it is digital only, however, there is a physical release incoming early next year, so definitely keep an eye out for pre-orders. Soul Hackers 2 kinda landed without much of an impact, at least not the impact that it deserves. The long-awaited sequel to a Sega Saturn game, this should have been excitedly expected, and I think if it released on the Nintendo Switch, it would have got a huge boost in terms of marketing. But you power console players just couldn't be asked to get excited, could ya? This is kind of like an old school Shin Megami Tensei game. It's a spin-off but plays similarly, more technological, give it a try. Star Ocean: The Divine Force is the 6th major installment of the series, a series which has more remakes and remasters than actual individual entries. That's impressive. I haven't played this one as of yet, but I got the feeling that this wasn't as well regarded as the previous main entries in the series, with production value being toned down a notch. But you know, games are expensive to make these days. In terms of sci-fi JRPGs, I always thought this series had the potential to be something special, but didn't quite live up to that, at least in my opinion. Star Ocean, the second story R, however, is considered the best in the series, and it's the one I haven't actually played at the time of writing this, but I'm looking forward to giving it a go. This is now using the 2D HD engine, which I love, but actually, you know what, I think the original remake, I think I like that more. I love the chunky feeling, but I digress, I'm sure this is going to be awesome as well. Sword and Fairy, Together Forever, is part of a much-loved JRPG series in Asian regions, especially in Taiwan. It's super long-running but barely known in the West, but thanks to the efforts of East Asia Soft, the most recent titles are finally starting to see the light of day. Personally, I'd love to see the entire series be officially translated to English, but if not, then this PS5 version is still a decent place to start. It obviously doesn't have the budget of most modern JRPGs, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a lot going for it. Tactics Ogre Reborn is a remake of a remake, and it's an all-time classic, so it definitely deserves to be remade again and again and again. I played and loved the PSP version before it was stolen from me, but I've heard this is even better. This is the kind of game you need if you have a Final Fantasy Tactics itch and you can't wait for the supposed remake that's rumored. Not to mention because some enthusiasts will say that this is even better, those cheeky so-and-sos. They did switch up the gameplay a little bit for this Reborn release, which I think divided some people, thinking it made it slightly better or slightly worse, but either way, this should be an essential game in your collection if you love tactical RPGs. Tales of Arise is the latest game in the well-loved and long-lasting JRPG series, perhaps most famous for Symphonia on the GameCube and Vesperia on the 360. Although both have been ported to oblivion these days, I wonder if the same will happen to Arise in 20 years' time. I haven't actually played this one, but I've been told by fans that it's the best entry in a long time, even if it got all a bit grim and dark. Moving away from the Saturday morning cartoon anime vibe the series was well known for, and I would say loved for. I love Symphonia and Vesperia for their vibe, so yeah, I am a little bit worried about this one. Temtem is a monster catching and training game much like, well, you know, Pokemon. But Pokemon is not on the PS5, nor is it heavily an online game, which this one is. So yeah, this is so online it hurts. Actually, I don't know that, but it's a very nicely regarded game, even if the monetization is a little bit too strong for my liking. I mean, the gameplay is good, but season passes and stuff, come on now. The Caligula Effect Overdose and the Caligula Effect 2 are two games in the same series. I'm mildly surprised both have physical PS5 releases, especially the first one because that's borderline ancient at this point. But hey, better physical than digital only. These are games that are really trying to be a budgeted Persona game, which I think you could say about most NIS America JRPGs. They try, they don't really succeed, but I suppose they could say, they're commendable, and Caligula Effect 2 especially is supposed to be quite good in its own right. Decent amount of style, interesting enough story, give them a try. Monarch is kind of similar, not surprising since it's made by the same company. This one kind of flew under the radar and critics found it to be mildly mediocre, but slowly gamers have been biting back and saying actually it's a pretty decent time all things considered. The Diofield Chronicle is a mix of turn-based and real-time RPG, and even though it's a C-tier release from Square Enix, you have to commend the effort they put into this one. It looks great, and they really try with the political intrigue of the story, and it even has the classic awkward voice acting. It's a really fascinating title that didn't make much of an impact, mostly because Square Enix didn't publicize it much, and now they're complaining they should only focus on big budget games. There's no sense in big corporations. The Legend of Heroes Trails into Reverie is shockingly, as far as I'm aware, currently the only Legend of Heroes games on the PS5, at least that's been translated into English. Japan has a few of them because of course they do, and we need NIS America to get their Cali Girl translators to put down their pumpkin spice latte and get on with translating them. Actually, I don't know that. That's what some unhinged people tell me anyways. I'm getting distracted. Trails into Reverie is perhaps the worst way to start the series. Thankfully, you can make the most of the generous PS4 library that contains most of what you need to get up to date with this vast and interwoven narrative. Speaking of more Trails and Legend of Heroes, NIS America recently just announced that a double pack of 3 and 4 is getting a physical release. Sadly, due to rights issues, it's unlikely we'll get the start of the series, but that is what it is. And these ports, I'm not entirely sure what they'll have to offer over the PS4 versions, aside from saving shelf space and stackable trophies, but anyways, this is coming in early 2024. Trinity Trigger is what happens when you want to make Secret of Mana for the modern day, made by a few legends of the industry. This was made with budgeted sensibilities, but it's found itself being one of the best co-op RPG experiences around. They're not exactly a dime a dozen these days, so if you're looking for some couch co-op with a loved one and want to reminisce about the great days of Secret of Mana, then be sure to pick up this one. Undernaut's Labyrinth of Yomi is a game I've mentioned before, and I'm happy to mention it again because it's a super niche thing, it's highly priced, wasn't publicized much, which put a lot of people off thinking it was just like a throwaway thing, but Labyrinth of Yomi is a nice old school dungeon crawling RPG experience, but with a unique setting, something you'd almost never see in another game. The price might be high, but it's worth a shot if you like this style of gameplay, like Etrian Odyssey, things like that. Valkyrie Elysium is another one of those mid-budget games farted out by Square Enix with almost zero attention put into the marketing, although perhaps this was one for the better. It's part of the Valkyrie Profile series, but most fans would not like to say that. With the decade-plus gap between titles, they obviously wanted to modernize it and include action combat rather than turn-based, and many didn't like the story and the world building despite the decent production value put into it. Yakuza Like a Dragon is one when Yakuza decided to go JRPG. Of course, I am familiar with the Yakuza series, in fact I've played a couple of them, but they pump them out so often I still feel incredibly overwhelmed by the whole thing. I believe this is currently the only one of its style on the PS5, maybe, I don't know, can't be bothered. Both Ys 8 and Ys 9, despite being easily accessible by their earlier PS4 releases, did see a later native port to the PS5, physically, of course. Now, Ys 8 is an absolutely stellar game. When I played it originally on the Vita, I was just so shocked at the quality of it, and that's because I wasn't much aware of the series at the time, but it is truly fantastic. Great action RPG gameplay, nice town building mechanics, unbelievable music, highly recommended. Actually, I've never played 9 because I'm waiting to catch up with the series first, since it's supposed to be like a culmination of the series up to this point. I've played Ys 1 and 2 for this channel in a long retrospective, so it's gonna be a slow journey getting there, but eventually I will get there. Ys 10 is also releasing, but we don't know much about a Western release if there's gonna be any at all. I mean, it is likely, but you know how slow the localization can be, so it may take a year or so for that to come. Monochrome Mobius is a brand new release at the time of writing this script. I mean, I literally got an email 5 minutes ago to tell me it's out. Yeah, that's how far I am behind editing this video together. And I could have edited this script by the time I started narrating it, but you know what? No! Where did this come from, and why didn't NIS America put it on the Switch? They put everything on the Switch. I have not played it, I haven't heard anything about it, so why is it essential? Because it's new and it's physical, okay? This is about physical releases, and if you're a collector, everything is essential, yes? If you have played Monochrome Mobius, please leave me a comment below, tell me what it's like. And the same with Crime Machina. This is also a new release from NIS America. It literally released this week when I'm narrating it. It really doubled up by the time I'm getting this video out. Again, in the comments, please let me know, Crime Machina, is it good or not? Now, before we end this video, when I made the Switch JRPG list, I had a few comments telling me that I was an idiot for not mentioning From Software's releases. And you know what? I never have and never will say their Soul series is a JRPG. It sounds wrong. You can't say it doesn't sound wrong. I can't describe why, but it's wrong. However, I can't deny that they do fit in with some other games in this list, so I will mention Demon Souls and Elden Ring, which I'm saying through gritted teeth, because even though they are super amazing games, can they be a JRPG? Many people say they're the greatest games ever made, but then they've obviously never played Alundra. Go play Alundra, right? If you like Demon Souls, you like Elden Ring, go play Alundra. Just do it or watch my retrospective. And finally, while these are certainly not essential and feel like money grabs for being released individually, if you're a collector, you need to know them, okay? Kemco has been laughing their way to the bank with limited run games for many years now. They have a bunch of cheaply made, cheaply priced digital RPGs that they've sold, many through limited run games at like $30 a pop. There were like 50 on the PS4, and now they're rolling out the PS5 versions. Here's a quick list of those that have been up for pre-order already. We've got Alphadia Genesis 1, Alphadia Genesis 2, Armed Emeth, As Divine Cross, As Divine Saga, Blacksmith of the Sun Kingdom, Chroma Quartal, Crystal Author, Dragon Lapis, Liege Dragon, and Ruin Verse. But you don't really need any of those, I would say, unless you're a really true collector. Well, what do you think? What is the state of PS5 JRPGs? Do you feel after a few years it's coming on strong, or do you think it's clinging on to the legacy of the PS4 a bit too much? Does it even matter? If you watched all the way through, please leave me an emoji in the comments. Which emoji? Well, something that you would like as a weapon for your JRPG character. Get inventive, guys. If you want to support this channel and get loads of bonus material, please check the Patreon link below, as it's the best way to support me. And of course, subscribe. And also, a big shout out to my super producers: Alexander Cato, Brent McLean, JCrod7776, Vey, Sven Nowlertz, Wixit, Josh Foot, and Dustin Martin.